We have our first tropical system of the season, and then we also have several storm complexes we'll be tracking over the coming days. And then, unfortunately, severe weather looks to return as we head into next week. So, if we take a look at the big picture this morning, there is Tropical Storm Alvin that is actually formed in the Pacific yesterday. That's actually going to be lifting due north in the coming days, and we'll be spreading some beneficial rains across Southern California back into Arizona and New Mexico. There's another strong complex of storms that went across Texas overnight, left some heavier rains and some hail back into the picture in Austin, and then even some flooding down there towards San Antonio this morning, where they're under an exceptional drought. We do have some instability that's moving across Indiana as well as in Ohio. And then we also have new development that will take place along the eastern seaboard to bring their own severe weather threat across the Carolinas later on this afternoon. So there is Alvin. There it is, lifting due north. It is a tropical system. It's about a 50-mile-per-hour tropical storm and not expected to be a hurricane. In fact, it's expected to downgrade to a tropical depression as it lifts further north. So not any terribly too much concerns, but it will actually spread those beneficial rains into the desert Southwest where they actually desperately need it. So if we take a look at the overall setup, there's the ridge of high pressure. It is locked and loaded today across California, much of the deserts there into Idaho, Montana. We'll be looking at numerous records looking to unfold later on this afternoon, and the cooler air mass actually just continues. We've had a series of cool fronts that have just been relentless across much of May, has left much of the central and eastern two-thirds of the U.S. on the somewhat cooler side. But there is your overall record-breaking temperatures today. A lot of heat on the map before Alvin kicks in and wipes away this ridge. We're going to be dealing with some record high temperatures across a good part of the West Coast. And look at some of these areas into Idaho, 99 degrees there. Montana sporting 94. So that is plenty hot for them this time of year. But yes, Alvin will eventually make its way into that neck of the woods and eating away that ridge, and that'll be a distant memory by the time we head into at least Sunday. But look at the cooler air mass that just continues to hang on for much of the Great Lakes and into the Northeast. These are high temperatures, folks, into the 60s, if not some areas into the 50s for late May standards. But there is your severe threat later on this afternoon, with all the instability continue to push further east. Now that's going to set up shop across Georgia, back into the Carolinas, through Virginia. And some of these actually could turn tornadic, especially up there into Virginia later on this afternoon. So we could see some marginally to quarter-size hail across this region. Definitely some gustier winds up to 60, 65 miles an hour at times. And then unfortunately, as we swing into northern Carolinas as well as into Virginia, we could be looking at that increased tornado threat later on this evening into the afternoon time frame. So here's the overall setup. Is you got the low pressure as we head into tomorrow that continues to come up the eastern seaboard, and you get the wraparound moisture, and yes, that almost chilly like rain will continue to fall across a good part of the mid-Atlantic as well as into New England. There is Alvin up here into just south of the Baja that will continue to lift north. Not much precipitation to work with as of yet on Saturday afternoon, but that likely changes by Sunday. But for the last 7 days, yeah, folks, it is not feeling like May up there across the Great Lakes and a good part of the Ohio Valley, much of the Mid-Atlantic and the Northeast. Anywhere averaging 5 to say 10 degrees below average over the last 7 days. So it's going to end on the cooler side, for May standards across at least the northern tier of the U.S. But then as we head into Sunday, that low pressure center will finally start to move out, and then we'll have some drier air sneak back into the picture across the Great Lakes, the Ohio Valley, the Tennessee Valley, back into the Mid-Atlantic, into the Northeast. And there is Alvin making its presence up across the southwestern regions, Yes, good to see above average precipitation for a good part of Southern California, back into Nevada, into Utah, especially there in Arizona, New Mexico, portions of Colorado. But I think we do have actually another storm complex is going to be racing southbound across the plains, and that could kick up some strong to severe thunderstorms early Sunday morning across North Texas, and that could filter down into Central Texas as we get deeper to the morning time frame on Sunday. Be on the lookout for that, because increasing possibilities as that looks to evolve with some of the short range guidance. But yes, there is your precipitation likely from Sunday afternoon to Monday afternoon across a good part of Arizona. This is easily half inched, even some 1 inch totals. Definitely some much needed rain across Phoenix into the Tucson region, and that blends over into New Mexico. Much of the Four Corners region will be experiencing that much needed rain, and then much of the other parts of the country will start to dry out. But what's going to happen is this moisture will actually help spread back into with the west to east flow into the Central Plains. That will link up with another disturbance, a more significant trough that we'll be diving in, and the dry line setup will take shape on Tuesday, and that likely will be bringing more severe storms. So for the overall setup for Monday night heading into Tuesday, we've got these double barrel troughs. This is the remnants of Alvin, and then we have another upper level low that will be backing up behind it, with the trough coming in, the ridge building back, with the warmth coming back in the picture, instigating that instability back in the region, and all that is going to start to come together to spell more severe weather as we head into next week. So you can see this conveyor belt of disturbances. You've got the one system with Alvin going to be swinging through the plains on Monday, and then we got the tail end Charlie back behind that one that will likely reinforce the shot on Wednesday. But overall, going to that transitional period, going into Monday, that Tuesday time frame, we'll watch that trough coming in from the north, and that should set up an area of low pressure center further south across Nebraska. And then you have the upward rising motion air with the vertical lift and the water vapor coming back in the picture, with all that Gulf moisture pulling back into the Central Plains. That's going to set up shop for more severe weather, especially as when you tap into some of these elevated dew points surging back well into the 70s across the south, going into the 60s, lifting back into much of the upper Midwest, into Wisconsin. That's going to spell trouble with several rounds of storms. So it kicks off on Monday with an area of disturbed weather with this low pressure that will be swinging across. Those could turn severe in the heat of the afternoon across Nebraska, a good part of South Dakota. That heads into Minnesota with some more heavy rain, and then of course that threat just shifts a little bit further south, heading into that Tuesday time frame, where we've got a pretty big significant system likely coming back in the plains region across Kansas, Oklahoma, and those areas into North Texas again. Expect severe weather to come back in the picture, and that likely continues even on the day on Wednesday. So if you break it down over the next 5 days, kind of looks like this, with these systems coming in from the west. You've got some higher winds coming back in the picture for Sunday across areas of Oregon and Washington. There's the remnants of Alvin, and some of the Santa Ana winds are going to be mixing in. Of course, you got the beneficial rains across the desert Southwest, but we'll be looking at several disturbances that'll link up starting on Monday. So you got the severe weather threat, and of course the heavier rains are going to come along with it that blend into North Dakota as well as into Minnesota, and that shifts over into areas of Wisconsin as well. And then of course further south on Tuesday, that'll link up with another disturbance as all that energy starts to come together across Kansas as much as into Oklahoma, and they're into North Texas, setting up severe weather and more heavy rain across those regions. And of course, further south, it doesn't make it that far south, so you're in the bake zone with the high heat index values well over 100, surging to 110 feels like it's not going to feel pretty for the deep south, especially as we head into middle part of next week with all that moisture on the ground, and then you got the south wind, and it's going to feel just downright yucky. But overall, as we go into Wednesday, it doesn't stop. You got the chill in Charlie coming back in the picture. So you got the first system coming in through Tuesday, and then you have the second system with a reinforcing shot of strong to severe thunderstorms, as that we have another trough that will be ejecting out in the plains. So that sets up a renewed threat for more severe storms likely in Texas as well as into Kansas and going into Oklahoma as we head even into Wednesday of next week. So guys, I appreciate you guys watching. Do like this video, definitely hit the subscribe button, and catch the next update where I protect you before and after the storm.